Hello, I hope you're well. It has been a really crazy, stressful few weeks. In fact, it's been an incredibly busy year. And if you can hear my dog, he's probably in the background scratching on the window. I'm not sure why. He wants to go out probably and chase the rabbits. We're at my brother's house and there's a lot of wildlife in the garden that he's not quite used to. So if I have to cut this short, it's because of that. Now, I don't know about you, but I find this time of year to be quite a busy and stressful time of year. And how on earth do we keep that stress under wraps? How do we, not under wraps, but how do we cope with our stress when we're running around, some of us with children who are at school, maybe little baby children doing their nativity plays, which is so sweet. And then people, university level children who will be doing end of term, maybe exams, people doing their mocks for their exams when they're 16 or 18 here in the UK, GCSEs and A-levels. It's a very busy time of year on top of sort of carol services, nativity plays, all the stuff that's going on with their schools, and also Christmas, Hanukkah, holiday season in full swing. So we've also got our pressures as adults. So if we don't have children, we've still got our pressures as adults coming to the end of the financial year, coming to the end of our work time, Christmas parties, having to wind up deals, get things finalised, sort things out, tax, goodness knows what else. And it all seems to sort of speed up, doesn't it? Now, how on earth do we stay sane? Some of us don't. This is true. Some of us do. But how do we do it? I don't know how I do it. I have to say I've been walking around with a sort of headache for the last few days. I mean, it comes and goes. It's not that horrendous. But it reminds me that actually we do tend to overload ourselves with stuff and take on a lot of things. And it can be very challenging, especially with the responsibility maybe of elderly relatives or friends, people who are unwell, people in hospitals, in hospices, people going through all sorts of treatment, loved ones in all sorts of situations, rushing around trying to see them, perhaps trying to help them, and caring for them, which is also very exhausting at this time of year. Plus all the people in the health services and carers everywhere around the country. My heart and my thanks seriously go massively out to you. You are amazing. My dog, I was just checking to see what he's doing. We're at my brother's house and there's a lot of exciting things from here which he should not be chewing. Thankfully, he's chewing one of his toys. But yes, it's a very busy time of year. Getting those decorations out, putting up all the lights, getting everything cleaned up and ready for all the hordes that are going to descend on your home, or if you're going away, long places to travel, train journeys, aeroplane trips, airports, everything's chaotic, everything's overbooked, everything's expensive, and it's just exhausting. I find it exhausting. I've got a kind of an excuse this year because my plumber's at my house, and so my excuse is very minimal Christmas decorations, no Christmas tree for me. This is my brother's Christmas tree, which I'm very glad he's got because I will be spending Christmas here. And also my children aren't spending Christmas with me, which means I won't have the pressure of, well, not the pressure, but the joy of putting up all the decorations with them and then having to tidy them all up again in the new year. I've also got, because of all the plumbing work, there's a whole load of redecorating and making good that's going to need to be done in the new year. So I'm not going to add to the stress by putting up decorations only to take them down again. How on earth do we keep calm? How on earth do we do what that good old slogan says, keep calm and carry on? How do we maintain that? How do we do that? Well, many people exercise. They go on long runs, lovely walks. There's the whole thing about, which I really enjoy doing, which is forest bathing, where you go into the woods or you go into nature and you do the slow looking thing, which I've talked about. That's a really good way of calming and winding down and of trying to de-stress. But there's other ways as well. There's listening to lovely classical music or music. I was listening to the radio on the way down here yesterday, and they were talking about pets and how classical music and calming music can really help pets with their mental health and anxiety. So, and we all know the benefit that music can have on us because, well, most of us do if we enjoy music, because you put on your favourite piece of music or a very calming piece of music, or you sit in a wonderful concert and you get carried away, you get transported from your current environment, wherever you are, to a completely different place. Your mind can wander, and all of your cares and worries will be kind of lost to the wind and lost to the musical notes. And they were talking on this it was actually on Classic FM. They were talking about, they have a pet program for pets, which starts around bonfire time. So it's sort of around the time of the end of October, beginning of November. So bonfire night here with all the fireworks is on the 5th of November. And I think it goes on for about a month during the sort of festive period. And I think that that's a really brilliant thing to do. I always put the radio on for my dog whenever I leave him at home in the kitchen on his own. I'll put the radio on. It will usually be on BBC Radio 4, which I usually have on anyway in the background if I'm in the kitchen. Or I will turn it on to Soothing Classics, Classic FM, or BBC Radio 3, which is a lovely classical channel as well. And I know that within a few minutes he'll probably be fast asleep on his bed, so and not anxious at all. And it is very calming. But another thing that's calming is reading, maybe doing something creative, doing some knitting, crochet, maybe baking. Maybe at this time of year you find a way to kind of gain control of the situation when everything else is going crazy around you, is to do some baking, or get out your knitting needles, or sit down quietly with the radio on or television, or just quietly not by the fire, or if you're in the springtime or summertime down in the Antipodes, just sit outside in the garden and enjoy the bird song or the animals around you and the sound of nature, and just make something beautiful, like do some knitting, crocheting, patchworking, whatever it is that you like to craft and do. All of those things are brilliant for your mind, and brilliant at this time of year to actually just transport you to another dimension where you don't want to be bombarded and crushed and overrun by all the madness around you. I mean, when I'm at home, I don't notice it because I don't watch commercial television or listen to commercial radio. So I don't see the adverts. I don't listen to all of the nonsense about what you have to buy your children or buy your friends or whatever it is. The latest plastic rubbish that gets, all those air miles imported from halfway around the world, only to be left in a great big bundle on the floor that nobody wants to play with after 5 minutes. I don't do any of that. I've never done that with my kids. I think the closest they got to plastic was Sylvanian families, and they often had wooden dolls' houses and wooden bits and pieces to go along with those. Or they took them outside and played in the garden with them. So I wasn't never into commercial stuff or gaming for them or anything like that. So hopefully they've had a very kind of wholesome upbringing. But what do I do? Now, what do I do to relax? Okay, I walk my dog. That's amazing. I brush my dog, actually. I'm really enjoying doing that most days. Getting out the brush and grooming him and making him all into this even more of a fluff puff. And then just stroking him seems to really calm my mind and make me feel very calm and at peace. And I've really noticed that. For me, I think, and he loves it, he just kind of falls asleep and just goes into this sort of, looks like he's just in ecstasy. And I really enjoy it too, and it's a lovely bonding thing to do, and it's just very kind of intimate between us, and I really, really love that. I suppose if you have a partner, you have that, they can calm you, they can rile you, but they can also calm you, and you can laugh and tell jokes and have some fun with them. But there are other ways as well: reading, doing something creative, painting, drawing, pottery. Now, pottery, that's a good one. I love making pots and making clay things. So pottery is great, sculpting, all of those things, making jewellery, beading, all sorts of things, looking after your plants, gardening. Fabulous for your mental health and brilliant to bring you down into a sort of calm space. But often in winter, it's very difficult to do some of those outdoor activities. Well, here in the Northern Hemisphere, when it's windy and it's wet. But I don't think it's stopped raining here for days and days and days. Or Helen says she likes to make clothes for her grandkids. So that's fabulous. No plastic crap. I'm with you on that, Helen. Making clothes for your grandchildren. Now, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. I remember my mum used to make my clothes, and I used to be quite embarrassed sometimes going to school in a homemade dress when everybody else had the latest Bieber or whatever it was. But actually, when I look back, we didn't have any money when I was growing up, and my parents, and it was really great to have something that Mum had actually made from some pretty fabric. And I really enjoyed dressmaking and all sorts of things like that. So well done, Helen. I think that's a brilliant thing to do. Excellent. Nice one. That's a good tip. The other thing I was going to suggest is, maybe starting a project for the new year, like maybe doing some making some day books or doing some diary keeping or doing some sort of like scrapbooks and things like that, where you can keep all your thoughts and ideas and creative things in one place and then refer to them as the year goes on and maybe see where your thoughts have gone throughout the year. I have soon got to start on my next book. Now, some of you will know that I've already brought out 2 books. An Apothecary of Art to Soothe Your Soul, which was a very calming book. And also my latest book, which I've got here, which is called Calm Your Mind. So in times like this, if you're looking for a little bit of escapism, I don't know, many of you have probably already purchased the book, but this is a great way to just like step out of whatever you're doing for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, and just lose yourself in my book. I gave a lovely little opening at my local bookshop about a month or so ago when my book came out, and one of my friends was there, and she said to me, "Oh, Lisa, I bought your book and I went home, and on Saturday I made a lovely big cup of tea, sat in my favourite chair, and she said, I just opened your book and I didn't realise I was going to lose myself for an hour in the beauty that's inside your book." And I think things like that, you know, we forget that actually when it's very easy to escape away from all of the stress that's around us. Get out an old photograph album and I can guarantee within 5 minutes you'll be lost inside all those old memories. And you know, it might be sad, it might be happy, it might make you remember things that perhaps you've forgotten, perhaps some of the things you maybe wanted to forget. But I'm hoping that you'll find photographs in there which will bring back some happy and joyful memories as well. And that's a wonderful way to step out of all the hubbub and stress that's going on around you and actually get out of the situation and just go back and think about your lovely happy memories and try and focus on some of the good times that you had. I know it's difficult, and I've been through divorce, and you know, it was a very difficult divorce, but I married my husband because we loved each other at the time. And every time I look back at the photographs, I have mixed emotions. I feel quite sad, obviously, that we're not gonna be able to carry on and continue as one big family. But at the same time, you know, I have my lovely children, and there were really wonderful memories that were associated with the times that we did have together, even though there's a lot of heartache and sadness as well, and it's been a lot of pain and stress. But I try to focus on the good times because I think that there's no point dwelling on the bad times of the past. Hang on, let me just check on my dog. Clemmy, come on. So if I rattle these treats, Clemmy, come on, where are you? Clem. Well, he should come, so he's obviously up to no good. Clemmy, here he is. I'm going to give him a little treat. Good boy. Because I'm very worried at my brother's house that he might be up to something which he shouldn't be up to, because there's so much exciting stuff here. Like wires, Christmas presents with bows on, all sorts of hidden gems, like people's trainers and stuff like that. Anyway, hopefully he's not getting involved with any of that stuff. I think he's just rummaging around for some bits of pieces of crumbs and things underneath chairs and stuff like that. See if he can find some dead spiders or something. Ooh. Anyway, I'm going to just quickly hop into my Calm Your Mind book for the rest of my little chat, if you'd like to hear some of the stuff that I've got in here, because it's a beautiful book. And in fact, this isn't my copy, this is my brother's copy. And in fact, it's my sister-in-law's copy because I gave it to her for her birthday. And she said, and she's quite, you know, she speaks her mind. She said that she felt that it was much easier and kind of more calming than my first book. So it's also it's slightly smaller, so it's a really nice size, and it's less expensive as well, which is even more exciting. So I'm just going to open the book at any old random page, and here we are. We've got this beautiful painting of the women walking along the beach. It's one of the lovely Skagen painters, Michael Ancher, and his wife Anne Ancher also was a great painter of that group. And I've got this lovely quote here about friendship, friends like you and me. Old friends become more and more precious to us as the years pass. They can look at us for who we once were and who we are now, appreciating the difficulties we have overcome, the abilities we have acquired, and the ways we have stayed true to ourselves. That's by Wendy Lustbader from Life Gets Better. And actually, I have to say that I do think that life does get better as you get older. Some people live in the past and think, oh, my glory years were when I'm, in my 20s or in my 30s. But as I'm reaching the end of my 50s, I definitely feel that everything's improving for the better. I mean, I wish I was younger in years, but I'm glad I've had the wisdom and the experience. I have the wisdom from the experience that I've gone through and the stuff that I've gone through. Right, I'm going to read another quote from this book by Nora Ephron. Reading is escape, and the opposite of escape, it's a way to make contact with reality after a day of making things up. And it's a way of making contact with someone else's imagination after a day that's all too real. That's exactly what I've just been saying, isn't it? That, if we read, if we escape into a book, like my book, then we can soon escape from the realities of everything that's around us. We might be sitting in the middle of a building site, in the middle of work that's being done, like me at my house, which I'm not at the moment, thankfully. Or we might be in the middle of a very stressful situation. Perhaps we're moving house, perhaps we're getting divorced, perhaps we're going through some kind of trauma or illness, sadly. But we can escape just for a little while, a few moments, if we pick up a lovely book and open it and begin to read it. So I am going to read another lovely little quote. Look at this gorgeous painting by what's his name? Paul Ransom. Look, lovely, lovely woman, sort of odalisque, lying there in the window. Love me, sweet, with all thou art, feeling, thinking, seeing. Love me in the lightest part, love me in full being. Elizabeth Barrett Browning, I love her work. In fact, I might try and pick up a little book from the library of hers and do a YouTube video where I will read from her, because I think she's done some wonderful, beautiful sonnets and some lovely, very romantic poetry, which I love. So, one of my favourite poems by W.B. Yeats. Look at this, Edward Robert Hughes, this gorgeous painting here. Oh, she's summoning up the sort of spirits, twilight fantasies. If you look closely, you can see all these little kind of fairies and kind of little sprites and things coming out of her magical pipe, her music, like a little flute that she's playing. Had I the heavens embroidered cloths, enwrought with golden and silver light, the blue and the dim and the dark cloths of night and light and the half-light, I would spread the cloths under your feet. But I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams. Oh, I love that. W.B. Yeats, aid wishes for the cloths of heaven. I love it. And this fantastically dramatic painting, look at that. Storm clouds, that lovely dark sky. Gorgeous. And this is a painting by Nikolai Nikolaevich Dubovsky, and it's a quote from Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain: when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what the storm's all about. Christmas feels like a bit like that, doesn't it? The holiday season, Hanukkah, whatever you're celebrating or not celebrating, this time of year can be very difficult for everybody. And it can be difficult for many reasons. It can be difficult because it's the first Christmas that marks a kind of time of loss. Perhaps your loved one has died this year, or several years ago, and every Christmas it comes home to roost that person is no longer with us. And that can be incredibly difficult. And also it's a very difficult time because you might not be with family or loved ones. You might be in a place where you can't get to them and they can't get to you. Or you may have had mishaps and upsets and things might not be resolved. And I think that, in fact, one of the guys that was in my house yesterday doing the plumbing, he was telling me that he doesn't get on with one of his neighbours. And he said that they've been neighbours since it was his grandmother's house, and he's been living in the house he's known the house since he was a little boy, and he's probably in his late 40s now, 50 maybe. And he said that his son was kicking the football and it kept going over the fence, and the neighbour was absolutely fine. And then one day he was really angry and came over and completely lost his temper. And that was a year ago, and they haven't spoken since. And I said to him, the guy whose son, you know, obviously he was upset with his neighbour because the neighbour lost his temper, was sort of ranting and shouting. And I said, well, maybe it's time to, you know, make it up with your neighbour. Maybe it's time to say to your neighbour, come on, why don't you come over and why don't we go out for a beer, go to the pub for a beer or something and have a talk about this, because we can't carry on like this. We've known each other all our lives, and I really want to try to be friends again, be happy, good neighbours again. And he obviously thought about it, and actually before I left the house yesterday and I went to say goodbye, he said, oh, you know what you were saying about my neighbour? And I said, yeah. And I said, and I've been thinking about it. And I know that if my son if my next door neighbour had come over and shouted in front of my son about my son kicking a football, which he never would have kicked a football because they didn't like football, but something else, a frisbee or whatever it would be, or making too much noise, I would have stuck up for my son or my children too. And I would have been very defensive and like big mama in motion. So I said, I know it's a very, very difficult thing for you to do, to kind of go and offer the hand of friendship again, because he really upset you and he really offended you and he upset your son. But life's too short, and really forgiveness, isn't that the first step in the road of enlightenment? That's pretty wise, isn't it? Right, I'm going to read one more quote from my lovely, lovely book, Calm Your Mind, which I'm going to put the link in well, it's in my bio at the top of the page, but I'll put it in the chat. This is by Ian Thomas. Be soft. Do not let the world make you hard. Do not let the pain make you hate. Do not let the bitterness steal your sweetness. Take pride that even though the rest of the world may disagree, you still believe it to be a beautiful place. There we go.